Hey everyone, welcome back to some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called Why They Don't Have to Pay Property Taxes. I live with my parents in a village, and the area I live in, let's call it a block, consists of 30 houses including mine. In my part of the village area we don't have an individual mailbox for each house. Instead we have a huge mailbox at the start of the street for everyone to use. Every year in my country we will receive a letter from the district office, DO, telling us how much property tax we need to pay to them. Since the house was built on land my mother inherited from my late grandparents, her name is the one on the residential deed. But most of the time my dad will be the one who handles all the paperwork. As the person in charge of picking up the letters from the mailbox, I always notice that my mom will receive a lot of letters from the DO during the tax season. Each of them is a paper telling us how much tax we need to pay, and every one of them is different. I never asked why or what happened until a few days ago. I had tea with my father and I asked about them. Turns out, because of some stupid clerical issue at the DO, all of the property tax for all of the houses in the block was placed under my mom's name. All 30 of them. My dad told me that he had brought the matter to the DO many times, and he told me this is how the conversation will always go. Excuse me, I would like to inquire about my property tax. How come we receive 30 of them? Oh, that is because they are all registered under your wife's name. That is a mistake. We only have one house that is registered under my wife's name. Please fix this. We can't, sir. If you wanna change it, please show us the proof of sale and ownership transfer. But there is no sales record, since other than the one my family and I live in at the moment, we don't own other houses. So obviously we didn't or even can't sell them. Unfortunately, sir, we can't help you unless you have those evidence. Please pay your residential tax, sir. Well, which one should I pay? Which one of them is for the house that I'm living in? You need to pay all of them, sir. And I don't know which one is which, since all of it is registered under your wife's name. So you want me to pay for my residential tax, but you can't tell me which one is mine? And you won't be able to fix this unless I show you the proof that we had sold the house we don't own? And you can't change the name on those houses to the right owner's names? Yes. Well, fine. I won't pay anything then. Excuse me, sir? But you need to pay your residential tax. Yes, I need to pay for my, or rather my wife's residential tax. Other than the one we live in right now, the rest aren't mine. But if you don't pay, we will seize the houses. Go ahead. Those are not my houses. And if you seized mine, we'll see what the media would say. And that is how my family and everyone that lives in the block never paid even a single cent of residential tax throughout 20 plus years living here. And due to the DO's ineptitude, the issue is never solved, and no DO officer came to seize our property or anything. The next story is called HR Lady Doesn't Like Me. This happened at the company that I currently work for, but it was many years ago. I did not plan for this outcome. It was just a coincidence caused by insisting on malicious compliance. I work in IT, and when I started my job was rather entry level, but it was paid as a salary position. After some years the company decided to make it an hourly position, which I did not like for a variety of reasons. The company's main hourly worker pool was for manufacturing and assembly lines. So the company structured its hourly policies around that position. Rigid start and end times, scheduled breaks, and sick time billed to your earned PTO. A lot of these policies were not really compatible with my availability and the type of work that I was doing. Not to mention, some of the benefits changed considerably. Hourly employees were supposed to use a time clock, but those were only in buildings that had manufacturing. My manager at the time totally understood why I was disgruntled, and she came up with a few workarounds. One of which was to enter a generic 40-hour time card for me in the system every week. This was great, because it meant that I did not have to use the punch clock. If there was any overtime, she would go in and fix it later. There was nothing that I could do about the change to hourly, but being me, I was pretty vocal about it. My attitude eventually caught the attention of the HR lady. She also got wind of the whole time card deal, so that came to an end. I gave in and started using the punch clock, no more edits. At some point my manager needed me to start the day in a different building which had no punch clock. I don't think she was aware that there was no punch clock, so she had to make an edit to my time card for that day. Well, the HR lady saw the edit and assumed that I was still being obstinate. Out of the blue, my manager scheduled a formal type meeting with me in one of the local conference rooms. She presents a document for me to read and sign, which is a formal reprimand for not following the policy regarding the time clocks. I was instantly furious because I was following the policy, but she sent me to her side without a punch clock. She had no choice, as the HR lady was the one who wrote the reprimand and told my manager to have me sign it. I read through the write-up and realized it was very poorly written, as if a grade schooler had prepared it. Lots of copy and pasted text, points that did not apply to the issue at hand, and no clearly defined problem with a desired resolution and probationary period. So I refused to sign it. I pointed out the many mistakes, the points that did not apply, and the lack of a resolution plan or time period. My manager agreed with me that the reprimand was wrong, but the HR lady wanted to go down this path. I thought, well, then we were gonna do it right, and I was gonna make her work for it. I demanded a rewritten form with a clearly stated problem, a desired resolution, and a time frame for when the matter would be considered resolved. My manager said the HR lady is not gonna like that. She is gonna want to talk to you directly. I said good. I will gladly tell it to her face. So we scheduled a meeting. I explained to the HR lady that the reprimand process was an opportunity to not only point out mistakes but also to correct them. The lack of an improvement plan in this write-up meant I could not meet those requirements. Begrudgingly, the HR lady accepted my complaints and agreed to redo the write-up. To my surprise, I never heard from her again about this issue. I had kind of forgotten about the whole thing until they did some restructuring in IT, which made me realize I didn't want that hanging over my head unresolved. I decided to formally request a copy of my file from HR, and to my surprise, the reprimand was not in it. I emailed the HR lady asking about this, and she explains that she rescinded it, so it's gone. I was a little confused as she hadn't mentioned this in the months that had passed, but was glad it was over. Sometime later, I was having lunch with my director and he brought up the reprimand. He was asking whatever happened with that. And I told him HR rescinded it. Apparently, HR cannot close a reprimand without the employee's leadership signing off on it, which was about 4 different people. Not a single one would agree to it. It turns out that my malicious compliance with the reprimand process forced her to write a detailed, intelligible reprimand including an improvement plan. All the extra details she had to add made it clear to everyone that it was stupid and she couldn't add it to my file. The last story is called Obvious Favoritism. Way back in 2013 I was a sophomore in high school. There was a tradition that on Fridays the cheerleaders, football players, without their pets of course, band members and the other groups performing wore their uniforms to class. This wasn't a written tradition and only the cheerleaders and dance teams' uniforms broke the dress code and nobody really batted an eye to it. I wasn't a skirt person, but I liked dresses once in a while. I grew up in Texas and it's still significantly hot in August and September. One time, while wearing a casual sundress in September, I was pulled out of class. I was reprimanded because the end of my dress was 4 inches above the knee when the dress code said no shorter than 2. I pointed out the cheerleaders and dance teams' uniforms every Friday and how they reached mid-thigh at their longest. But I was told that this was okay because students can wear official school uniforms. And with that, I was sent home to change. Clearly, somehow someone had forgotten I was on the golf team. Immediately, my mind was turning to the next Friday. The school had recently upgraded the golf team uniforms the year prior. The girls' team uniforms consisted of a short-sleeve collared polo shirt and a skirt. If you don't know what a skirt is, it's essentially a skirt and short shorts combined. It looks like a skirt, but they essentially act like built and bike shorts, and these were short, I'd argue shorter than the average cheerleader skirt. So that next Friday, about 3 days later, to my parents' surprise, I was ready to go that morning in my golf uniform. Normally, I was taking a bag to keep the clothes in to change into after school. But I just said, Fridays we can wear our uniforms to class, and they accepted without question and took me to school. Well, by the second period, I was sent to the office yet again. The first thing the assistant principal asked me was why I would deliberately disobey her right after our last conversation. She threatened in school suspension and said I would never get anywhere in life by not listening. When I finally had a chance to get a word in, I said, "But this is my school golf uniform." And I pointed to our school's logo that was sewn into my polo shirt. "You said students can wear official school uniforms to class. Why are the cheerleader uniforms okay and mine isn't? This isn't even a skirt, it's a skirt. It has pants." I still remember how angry she was. She stared me down for what seemed like a millennia. Then she snapped and told me to get out of her office and go sit in the lobby area. Said I knew what she meant and she would be calling my parents about this blatant disrespect. So I waited and played on my iPod and chatted with the nice secretary, trying to keep myself distracted. Because in reality I had been really trying not to cry. I had massive anxiety when it came to authority, but I still had my naive sense of injustice and I didn't just want to let this go. After about 20 minutes she popped her head out. In a very monotone voice, she told me that I could go back to class and to let teachers know I had gotten permission from the front office to wear my uniform. Then she went back in and closed the door before I could even think to respond. I spent the rest of my day dealing with teachers questioning me about my outfit. One or two were calling the front office to double check my claims that I had in fact gotten permission. I went to practice after school as normal before being carpooled back home. My dad met me at the front door with a small smirk. I asked him what in the world happened, because I knew he was the go-to contact for my school, so I knew she called him. He explained that she called and tried to get him to come to the school and get me. She talked about punishments for my insubordination. He immediately began to argue with her and admitted he raised his voice quite a bit. He asked why I wasn't allowed to wear my sports uniforms that the school provided to me as a dress requirement at my golf practice. And he mentioned taking this all the way to the school board and resolving this obvious favoritism. He then asked me not to do that again, but that he was proud of me. He told me, "I know I had told you never to start a fight, but to always fight back. I always fought physically, but you sure took that advice." Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe. Have a great day. Bye bye.